Oshino Meme, a frivolous man wearing a psychedelic shirt who is just passing by. He is a character with a very unique and profound view on life, one that dictates not only the path he himself walks, but also how he interacts with people and how he helps them to save themselves. If you find this entertaining at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell, as I cannot explain to you how much such a small action can do for this channel. Also, if you want to support me further, my books are available at Amazon.com. What, you look annoyed at my constant plugging? Did something good happen? Oshino Meme is a specialist. He studied as a Shinto priest, where in the occult club he met Gaian, Kaiki, Kagane and Tadatsuru. And this meeting is what drove him into the world of oddities. A world in which he became quite the expert, a specialist in oddities, especially when it comes to resolving problems and maintaining the balance. Oshino may well be the most experienced and powerful of all the specialists we meet in the series. He is someone Kaiki is wary of, someone who in Araragi's opinion is probably stronger than Kagane, and is the Kohai that Gaian seems to respect the most. He is very much the wise sage character, the one who usually dies as motivation for the protagonist. Not that Oshino Meme ever bites the dust, so to say, though dying without saying goodbye is kind of his style. However, even if he's this mighty specialist, one who can seemingly defeat any oddity in his path and save anyone he chooses, it isn't like he's an enemy to oddities or that he is an ally to humans, as the one thing Oshino values the most is balance. A balance between oddities and humans, between that side and this one. For Oshino, balance is the name of the game. He stole the heart from Kishot Accelerai and Heart Under Blader as she was too powerful. To balance things out, he weakened her. But then when the vampire hunting trio went after Araragi, the balance was once again tipped. So again, Oshino acts as a mediator to make the dispute between Araragi and the vampire hunters balanced and fair. As he isn't on Araragi's side, in fact he was meant to be Araragi's fourth opponent, in order to once again maintain the balance. As well, why should he be on Araragi's side? Araragi chose to let Kishot Accelerai and Heart Under Blader drink his blood, and he chose to agree to get his master's limbs back. All of the events of Bakemonogatari then are of his own choosing, so it's not like he is some human thrust into the world of oddities by force. He isn't a victim, he brought it on himself. Which is why Oshino doesn't show Araragi sympathy as a victim, as he isn't one. As in Oshino's mind, when it comes to oddities, no one is a victim, as oddities exist for a reason, and in nearly all cases, if you're involved with an oddity, it's for a reason because you made a choice. Senjigahara chose to rely on the weight crab as she was too weak to face her own past. She was not a victim in Oshino's eyes. Kanbaru chose to wish on the monkey paw. She was too weak to admit her own jealousy and to reconcile her own feelings. She was not a victim in Oshino's eyes. And Araragi chose to offer his neck to a vampire. He was too self-deprecating to see his own worth, so tried to give up his life for what he called a selfless cause in order to give his life some worth. He was not a victim in Oshino's eyes. As well, oddities don't attack people at random, they exist because of human thoughts and beliefs, and so only affect people with a good reason in mind. That all said, Oshino isn't completely heartless and does understand why people are affected by oddities for a reason, but not due to their own actions, and allows them to be the victims. The best example being Sengoku Nadeko, who Oshino sees as a victim, one who didn't bring their own misfortune upon themselves. Though that said, in Sengoku's case, that isn't exactly true, as it was due to her own self-labelling as a victim and her own insistence in her own mind that she is a victim that made her end up a victim, somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy, in a way, but that's very off topic. Oshino's pet phrase is that people need to save themselves all on their own. As it's their issues, it was their fault and so they have to clean up their own messes. He's a balancer, he's merely tried to strike a balance between the human and the oddity. A scenario where the human overcomes their own oddity related issue on their own without help from the outside, without any extra elements being added into the mix, any extras that could disturb the balance. For Senjigahara's crab, Oshino merely facilitated the meeting between the human and the oddity. He set up the scenario for the meeting and let Senjigahara solve the issue on her own to save herself. He was just a negotiator, a balancer, one who gave Senjigahara the chance to save herself all on her own. And for Kanbaru's monkey, Oshino again just provided the means and set up for the problem to be solved. He didn't do so himself, he set up the fight between Araragi and Kanbaru, and he called Senjigahara to the scene, but he didn't fight the rainy devil himself, nor did he act to comfort Kanbaru. That job fell on Araragi and Senjigahara, as they were already vital parts of the problem. One was the object of jealousy, the other an object of love, so neither disturbed the balance as they were essential pieces to begin with. Which is the same with Senjigahara's crab, as that was a problem between Senjigahara and the weight crab, no one else, and so the meeting, the resolution, was only between one human and one oddity. Oshino was a medium for the problem to be solved, but didn't do the solving himself. The closest he comes to actively saving someone was again the case of Sengoku's snake. But even in this case, he just gave Araragi the means to deal with it. As well, if you think about it, isn't Araragi also a key part of the problem as well? As Sengoku was cursed by a boy she rejected, and why did she reject him? As she already loved Araragi, or at least used her love for him as an excuse, and so when balancing needed to take place, it was left to Sengoku, her snake, and Araragi, a man intertwined into the issue even if he didn't know it to begin with. As well, maybe Oshino didn't see Sengoku as a victim at all, and saw right through the issue, arranging for Araragi to be present as well as a vital part of the balance that if gone would tip the scales. So by him being there, Sengoku in a way was able to save herself, but again we're going very off topic. The main point I'm trying to express is that Oshino doesn't save people, he merely acts as a mediator for the saving to occur. You can't write without a pen, the pen acts as a mediator between your mind and the paper, and you can't overcome an oddity without Oshino Meme. He acts as a mediator between a human and an oddity and allows the human to save themselves. As that is how balance between oddities and humans is maintained, and what is Oshino's job as a specialist is to maintain the balance. Although Oshino's desire to maintain balance does refer to his approach to resolving issues and helping people to save themselves, it also influences how he sees the world, as in Oshino's eyes everything is equal. When Kaiki asks whether a real diamond or a fake diamond was worth more, Oshino answered that both hold the same value. They are both equal, which is true to most things in his eyes. Humans and oddities, he has no preference for either, he is not an ally of one nor the enemy of the other. He sees them both equally, he doesn't take a side. In Monogatari, he weakened Kishot Acceleri and Heart Under Blader, an oddity to maintain balance not because he was on the side of humans, and he helped Kishot Acceleri and Heart Under Blader recover her limbs to maintain balance, not because he was on the side of oddities. He is neutral, never taking sides. Even when Hanekawa's neglect and abuse by her parents is revealed, Oshino takes no side. He doesn't label Hanekawa as right and her parents in the wrong, even though at first glance that seems to be the case, as he sees things from both sides, from both perspectives. There are reasons for oddities to exist, and there are reasons for the things humans do. Without a full understanding of those things, you cannot decide what is right and what is wrong objectively, and instead will label the side most easy to understand as correct. And so to avoid this bias, to keep the balance by remaining neutral, Oshino cannot pick sides and so must value the opinions of both the victims and dealers of abuse with the same weight. Such is the life of someone standing at absolute neutral. Oshino also requests money as compensation for jobs, as he sees effort spent as equal to financial gain. And then when he told Araragi his fee was void, it was only because in his mind the cost of getting Hanekawa, an uninvolved party, hurt was equal to what Araragi owed. And this eye for value isn't only restricted to time and money, as he will pay for stories, for oddity stories and local legends, as to Oshino, such things are equal to money, as everything has a balance and equal worth. Although I don't often delve into the meaning behind a character's name and their designs much in these analysis videos, I want to take a quick moment to address this for Oshino, as I think such things are very much relevant to his overall character. Firstly, his name Oshino means hidden plains. Oshi roughly translates to conceal oneself, which fits Oshino to a T, as not only is he always hidden in the shadows, only making a move when the balance needs adjusting, but he is also one to never reveal more information than is absolutely necessary. He is a walking mystery. And no roughly translates to plain/field, which works to reflect his vagrant lifestyle, living outdoors or in ruins. Also, fun fact, this kanji is also part of the word zaya, which translates to unaffiliated or private practitioner, both of which also act to describe Oshino, as for one, he is unaffiliated as he is a neutral party, one who doesn't take sides, and second, he is a private practitioner as he is a Shinto priest who is paid for his services, but is also not part of society as a whole, so is private in that sense as well. Meme, his given name though, doesn't really have much significance at all, except that it's usually a woman's name, which I guess could reflect him not having to take sides once again, as he has the name of a woman, but is a man in body and soul, but that might be a bit of a stretch on my part. No, it definitely is. One of the most quirky parts of Oshino's design is his habit of not lighting his cigarettes, and although in his own words that is because the smoke would be a pain to animate, I think there may be a bit more to it, as when you light a cigarette, one end burns and gets smaller, the balance is disrupted, one side is longer than the other, so by not lighting a cigarette, Oshino keeps it at a balance. Though that may be me reading into things way too much again. Another questionably intentional aspect of Oshino's design is that it is in clear contrast to Kaiki Deshu. though since Kaiki came after Oshino, it might in fact be the other way around. One is in all black and looks like they just came from a funeral, the other is in colourful clothes and looks like they came from a holiday on a tropical island. One is always upbeat and smiling, the other is sombre and cold-faced. One uses technology to do their work, the other can't work on mobile phone to save their life. See, a clear contrast as they are contrasting characters, both specialists but with different aims, and although you could also say that one saves others while the other dooms them, that is a very misguided simplification of Kaiki's character, and besides, Oshino doesn't save people, he just helps people to save themselves all on their own. Anyway, let's now come to his design proper. The most striking aspect is his psychedelic Hawaiian shirt, a look that may, for most people, bring forth the ideas of a stoner or someone high on life, and a sense of worldliness. A description not far off given Oshino's nature as a specialist in the supernatural. However, beyond this psychedelic mess of an outfit, there is a more subtle design cue, that being the symbol of an upside down cross, also known as St. Peter's Cross. On the one hand, this symbol is very much holy and significantly important to the Christian faith, with St. Peter being crucified upside down out of respect for Christ. So in this way, the symbol that Oshino wears shows his religious affinity, something quite relevant when you remember his college major was in Shintoism, which yes is a whole other religion, but gives across the point he has religious roots. And remember, he dropped out of college in a way abandoning his religious teachings, which again goes back to St. Peter's Cross, as although it is a sacred and holy symbol, it also in a modern view is now seen as a symbol of the Antichrist and of anti-Christian messages, a rejection of religion and spiritualism, which again is a key part of Oshino's character as he is committed to balance. So for him to sport a symbol that could be interpreted as both Christian and anti-Christian, of two sides of the one scale, he's very much in line with the theming of balance. Another way to interpret it all is that Oshino is a saviour much like Christ himself, but one with a twist, one who is represented not by a cross but by an inverted one, someone who doesn't save people and take on their sins, but instead helps people to save themselves and understand and reconcile with their own sins. Jesus is often shown in clean white robes with a full beard and straight, well-maintained hair, while Oshino is dirty, in clothes that can be called casual at the best of times, with stubble and spiky unkept hair. So Oshino can either be a worldly guru wearing a standard stoner attire, a religious person sporting the symbols of Christianity, as someone balancing both religious and anti-religious sentiments, seeking a balance between the two, or a twist on a saviour figure who doesn't shoulder sins and doesn't save people, but instead leads people to do such things on their own. As like in most things in Monogatari, there are endless interpretations and ways to read into a scene or a character, though whichever explanation you choose to subscribe to, we must all agree that Oshino has one of the coolest designs in the entire series. Oshino and Araragi, in Kanbaru's mind at least, are a potential ship. They are also a couple of pervs who love high school girls, but that is all rather irrelevant to this section of the video. Oshino is Araragi's saviour, just as much to the form of vampire as his god Hanikawa, as although at times Araragi can't stand Oshino, he was still the one who led him to salvation, who showed him the way back to humanity. Oshino guided Araragi less like a mentor or more like an advisor. He never made Araragi not kill episode, he just advised him that doing so would cost him his humanity. And he didn't steal back Kishot's limbs for Araragi, but instead gave him a chance to obtain them himself. He is, like I've already explained, a mediator, a person who stands between two extremes and acts to negotiate between the two. For Araragi, he allowed him to return from the side of a monster to the side of a human, but only by giving him the know-how and situation to do so himself. However, it isn't like he helps Araragi to save himself, as in the end, it's Oshino's actions that result in him returning to a semi-state of humanity as Araragi's saviour. Araragi merely follows Oshino's advice and doesn't do any saving for himself, which sounds weird until you remember that Araragi didn't resolve his issue then and there. No, it isn't until Nisei Monogatari, when he reconciles with Shinobu in that bathtub, that this occurs, that he saves himself by bringing the issue of his relationship with her to a conclusion. And why does this reconciliation happen? Because Black Hanikawa tried to kill Araragi and he asked Shinobu for help. And why did Black Hanikawa do this? Because Oshino let her escape. Once again, he set up the situation for someone to save themselves. And again in the Wari Monogatari, where Araragi saves Ogi, symbolically saving himself, who is the one who makes it go smoothly? It's Oshino. By declaring Ogi his family, it stops the darkness from killing her. But that act itself wasn't what saved Araragi, no, it just cleared up the messy loose end of Ogi living or dying. Araragi, by the point Oshino appeared, had already saved himself. And so, this in a way, recontextualises the entirety of Oshino's appearance in the series, as although he says he only stayed in town till the shrine issue was solved, which of course is still true, the main reason he left when he did and returned when he did was because he was doing his job as a mediator, as someone who sets the scene for someone else to save themselves. He turned up in Kizu Monogatari and stayed till the end of Bakemonogatari to act as a mediator for Araragi to overcome his own issues, and save himself, mainly by making friends, overcoming his flawed mindset, and by coming to an understanding with Shinobu, something that was set in place by Oshino's departure. And then when Araragi comes to a wider understanding of himself and his own issues with self-perspective, does Oshino return to set the groundwork for Araragi to truly save himself? And yeah, sure, technically Oshino only came as Hanekawa told him stories about their exploits in Germany, as told in Monogatari Tsubasa sleeping arc. Considering how much Oshino sees for Araragi, something he says multiple times in Bakemonogatari, it wouldn't surprise me if this was all part of his plan all along, and that he would have returned regardless to finish his job for good and to enable Araragi to save himself with no loose threads attached. Overall, Oshino is a very interesting character with a mindset and worldview that really can only be found in fiction, as it's just so complex and profound it's hard to wrap your head around anyone living by such a philosophy, and is one that really stands out amongst the rest of Monogatari's cast, and I think that is down to the simple fact that he is one of the few characters who has no flaws or issues to overcome. Araragi has to learn to form connections with others and to understand his own lack of self-perspective. Sendagahara has to learn to shoulder her own feelings. Hachikuji has to learn to move on both physically and emotionally. Kanbaru has to learn to accept her own feelings. Sengoku needs to stop acting the victim and using Araragi as a crutch. Hanekawa has to learn to understand herself, and the list goes on. Oshino though doesn't need to do this, as unlike most of the cast, he is an adult, someone to act as a wise saviour character. Though since this is Monogatari, you know that he isn't just a run-of-the-mill saviour archetype. However, the most profound part of his character to me is his philosophy, as it is one of the most inspiring parts of his entire character. As no matter how dark it gets, how hopeless it seems, even if no one comes and saves you, you always have the choice to save yourself. Until you die, you can always rely on yourself, and this is something Oshino believes with all his heart. So much so that he goes out of his way to set up scenarios in which people can understand this themselves by saving themselves. Even if people just want to be saved by someone else, Oshino instead teaches them to rely on themselves and to save themselves, as just because you ask for help doesn't mean it will come. Oshino overall is in a way a representation of freedom. He is a vagrant with no home, he is free to venture wherever he pleases, but more importantly he is free to be himself, free to not shower, free to not understand technology, free to dress how he wants and sleep where he wants, and is free to force his own ideals onto others. His ideals which end up saving people by having them save themselves, which goes back to his nature as an unconventional saviour, as every aspect of his character just links together so perfectly, as Oshino is almost perfect. And although that's a brilliant way to describe his character, I think there's one better, those being the words of a conman, Kaiki Deshu.
一体何をしているのだろうか。あのお人よしが子供の前では格好をつけたがるあの男が。
As at the end of the day, Oshino is a...
お人よし.
Comment of the week comes from Rafi's Anime, and I agree, gotta love some Barn. If you are interested in my literary endeavours, why not check out my books Gang for Justice and People of Fate Volume 1, available at Amazon.com. And if you want to help to support this channel, consider pledging to my Patreon, where for as little as £2.75 a month, you can get your name at the end of the videos, like Hikari Desu. So with all that said and done, I have been Seth the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I am signing out. Stay safe, everyone.